what these teachings tell us is true is literally unbelievable, isn't it? It's literally unbelievable to tell you that in spite of the fact that you've been conditioned to be miserable, in spite of the fact that you've been suffering, living in a society that's crazy, in spite of the fact that you've been living in a family that's crazy, in spite of the fact you have a crazy mind, in spite of all that and everything that's happened and all your childhood trauma and all that, in spite of all that, right now, without doing anything, you can be as happy as it's possible to be. Right now, without doing anything, you can be as happy as it's possible to be. That's unbelievable. That's unbelievable. That's unbelievable. That's why so few people, go along with this process and do these practices and study these teachings, right? Because they say, no, that can't be possible. That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't.
You don't have to do anything.
Don't have to do anything. That's not possible. How could you not have to do anything? All the doing I've done in my life, all the work that I put into creating a life that's workable, all the hard work that I did to save enough money to feel secure, all the hard work that I did to have the right shit, all the hard work that I did to have all that stuff, and yet there's still something missing. We can't be with the possibility of happiness. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't seem to be realistic to believe that you could be happy without doing anything. And yet it is actually true. And if you practice meditation long enough, if you get the teaching and you start to really have an open mind, I heard the other day that the mind's like a parachute. It only works when it's open. So if you can keep your mind open, right, and keep looking at these teachings and practices and give some time to the practice and allow yourself to be open and receptive, it may become evident to you. It may come to you. You're not going to go to it. You're not going to go to the truth about yourself. The truth about yourself is already there, so you can't go to it. But if you sit and relax and be calm and be silent and practice that consistently over time so that the mind calms down and the body relaxes, it won't even come to you. You'll just notice that it's here. It's never been anywhere else. It's here. The freedom, the peace, the contentment, the satisfaction is here. It's here when I am resting as the awareness, and the awareness is able to be with things as they are. The awareness sees things as they are. What does the awareness see when it sees things as they are? It sees itself. When awareness sees things as they are, it sees that awareness is all there is. Everything is awareness. And everything is formless, and everything is timeless, and everything is fulfilled. Everything is perfect. Nothing has to change. This is what the possibility is, that you can discover that there's nothing wrong. That's hard to believe, isn't it? You could discover that there's nothing wrong. You could discover that in actuality, if you're able to slow down enough, if you're able to calm down enough, right, so that you can actually see things as they are, what you will see is awareness manifesting in form over and over again. In your mind, it manifests as thoughts that appear and disappear. In your body, it manifests as sensations that appear and disappear. In your emotions, it manifests as emotions that appear, rise up, the energy that appears and rises up, right, and then dissipates. That's what's happening. And so if you're looking at this from an awareness perspective, what you see is emptiness takes form, disappears. Emptiness takes form, disappears. That's what you see. And when you're seeing that, what you're seeing is there's nothing to be upset about. This is what the teachings say. That the form has no existence of its own. The form has no the form has no independent origination. What you're seeing doesn't exist by itself. Has no independent origination. And yet we relate to it as if it does. We relate to thoughts as if they have the ability to disturb us, don't we? And yet thoughts have no independent existence. It's interesting because when you see it as it is, yeah, we literally are the source of the thoughts that appear, and then we take them to have appeared on their own. We are the source of the thoughts that appear, and then we take them to have appeared on their own, and then we let them bother us. That's pretty crazy stuff, right? So when you relax the body and calm the mind, you begin to witness the truth. You begin to see what's actually happening instead of what you thought was happening. And you stop believing the thoughts, because the thoughts come from the experience of being conditioned that you had when you were a kid. And that experience of being conditioned was the data being passed along from the people that were here before you to you, right? That caused them to suffer and be unhappy. And now it's causing you to suffer and be unhappy. That's right. So that's what's there. So when you see it for what it is, you realize there's no need to have that bother you. Because when you see it for what it is, you can see that it's all actually neutral, equal. If it's true that it's just awareness manifesting and disappearing, right? No matter what the appearance is, no matter what the form it takes, it's still just awareness taking form and disappearing, awareness taking form and disappearing. Therefore, everything is equal, isn't it? Everything is equal. Everything is just consciousness taking form, right? The form may appear to be different, but it's still just consciousness having taken form and then disappearing again. So if you begin to see it that way, then you can experience equanimity, because you are that consciousness, and you're seeing that that consciousness is balanced. It's already balanced. Nothing needs to be happening. That's why these teachings talk about the great perfection, right? These teachings talk about the fact that if you calm down enough and you relax the body and calm the mind sufficiently, that it's possible to come into sync with reality in such a way that you can see that everything is happening exactly the way it's supposed to be happening. And there's nothing that needs to be done about it. Not only is there nothing that needs to be done about it, but the idea that you have ever done anything or could do anything about it is an illusion. But that's not a problem, because there's nothing needing to be done. So you don't need to do anything. All you need to do is allow yourself to get real, to get in contact with reality as it actually is. So you can start being the awareness that is already balanced. The open intelligence that's already balanced, that doesn't need anything, that doesn't want anything. And so if you're experiencing this and you're practicing this by dropping into resting as awareness as often as possible for brief moments, if you're doing that, eventually what will happen is you will become imperturbable, because you're practicing being present to things as they are. And when you're present to things as they are, there's nothing to be upset about. Everything's perfect all the time. So when you're experiencing, now the mind may not be on board. No. The mind may not be on board, right? But that's okay. That's perfect too. Right? Because the mind had to do what it did, had to become a database. It had to become a database for the human being to use to exist, right? So in order to do that, it had to separate itself from the way things actually are, right? And have things appear to be a certain way. It had to separate from the way things actually are and have things appear to be a certain way. What's that certain way? Time and space. Time and space, and you're now located in a physical body, and you're now living in the belief system of being a person and a personality. That's just a necessary thing. That's the ticket to be human in order to experience a human life. So that may still play in your mind, right? But once you start to make contact with the truth, right, you understand that this has no power of its own. You can just let it play. You don't have to sign on to this programming. You don't have to let this programming determine how you behave, what you say, or what you do, because this programming now is seen to be outdated. It's not as useful as you thought it was anymore because it was producing a lot of unnecessary suffering. You know, one of the things that I was listening to Candace O'Denver last night, and she was saying, you know, this is kind of like when we're talking about this now and we're presenting you with this contemporary form of these ancient teachings, right, that do work, that are related to the truth. What we're asking you is to stop. If you have a computer, personal computer, right, would you be interested in running Windows 98? That was one of the earliest Windows operating systems.
No, it wouldn't.
Yeah. No, it wouldn't even run on your computer. No, it wouldn't even run on your computer. Since Windows 98, there's been tons of updates, right?
Yes.
And we're like in a whole different world of computing now, right? And now they're talking about these super quantum computers. I don't even understand it. But they're supposed to compute, you know, much, much faster than the computers that we have now, right? So what we're talking about here is not only updating the operating system, right, but abandoning it. Yeah, because the awareness that is your true nature does not need an operating system. It has unlimited intelligence, right? It has unlimited intelligence. The operating system is just an operating system that is related to the time-space reality. You know, it's related to the particulars, the situation we find ourselves in, right? The programming is about living in that reality, right? But if your identity that's being experienced, right, is beyond that and unlimited, right, then you can bypass that. You can bypass the operating system and just have a direct relationship with what's happening.
Cut out the middleman.
That's right. It's not so much cutting out the middleman, but it's kind of like if the mind is not functioning correctly in relationship to the way things actually are, right? You just take it offline and keep functioning in a realistic way in relationship to the way things are, right? And while it's offline in terms of it's not operating you, right? It's still updating based on what you're actually experiencing. That's called changing your brain, right? So if you do this over time and you don't let the programming in your mind and your brain run the show, right? And you keep responding to life directly from the truth, seeing things as they actually are, right? The good news is, and we just found this out, you know, 20 or 25 years ago, right, that the brain is plastic. Its neuroplasticity means that it's a learning organ. So if it's a learning organ and you're not following it because the programming there is outdated, right, then what you're doing, it starts to learn from. It starts to learn from the awakeness. It starts to learn from your modeling yourself relating to reality as it actually is. And so as the brain gradually reorganizes itself to be consistent with the way things are happening, right, then the mind becomes your friend. Yeah. The mind becomes your friend in terms of it's now running a way of being instead of a program for behavior. What these teachings and practices are about is to experience that you are the awareness of what goes up and comes down. You're not going up and coming down. You're the awareness of what's going up and coming down. You're not the happy one or the unhappy one. You're the awareness of the happy one or the unhappy one, and the awareness is always in the same state of being. The awareness is always in the same state of being. This is important to understand because you have to understand that you have the capacity to be in a state of well-being whether what's running in your mind is happy or unhappy, whether the circumstances that you find yourself in are interpreted to be good or bad circumstances. Yeah. In any situation, under all situations, in any form that consciousness takes, right, it's always just the same thing happening. That's the truth, right? So, yeah, it is the case that as you're practicing and learning about this, that you will fall into identifying with the thoughts or identifying with the feelings, right? And when you do that, you're back into way of relating to what's happening, in which part of it is acceptable and part of it is unacceptable. You fall back into that, right? And then you have the anticipation. You can't trust well-being because you know it never lasts. Right? But as you do these practices and you study these teachings, you begin to recognize that there's something that never changes and does last. That's the thing, you know, that what all human beings are searching for is that which doesn't change, aren't we? Isn't that the case? You know, if you feel good, isn't it the case that you want to experience that consistently, and you're afraid it's not going to last, right? And you believe it's not going to last, right? And anything you believe is true for you. That's something you have to really look at for yourself, right? Why do things occur to you the way they occur to you? They occur to you the way they occur to you is because the perception is a function of what you believe, isn't it? That's why things occur to you the way they do, because your perception, what you see, is a function of what you believe, and what you believe got downloaded to you as your conditioning. And that's determining what is being seen when you look through your eyes. You know, when the awareness is seeing. So, but when you see that, then you realize that need not be something that limits you or determines your experience. Because you can experience yourself as unlimited. You can experience yourself as space. And the space that is embedded in everything is never affected by what's happening. So your true nature is like that. Your true nature is like space. So through these practices and through these teachings, you can literally get to a point where you're consistently experiencing well-being. And therefore, you need not feel apprehensive about it, because you know that it lasts on its own. It's not coming from anywhere, it's not going anywhere, it's always just there, like that. So you're not going to it, you're not going to it and leaving it, it's always just there. Your attention goes to it and leaves it, but it never moves, it never changes. And so this is the good news, you know, this is the opportunity for you to see if you can take on board and have a conviction about the truth, so that you can practice these practices until you realize your true nature, until your true nature becomes so evident that it doesn't make any sense to rest as awareness. It's just, you go to do it and you realize there's nothing to do. I am aware of being aware. Right? And when you get to that point, you know, then your life becomes a continuous experience of well-being, no matter what happens.